What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome to a special model review. It's your host Ray. In today's video, I'll be reviewing the Aviation 400 British Airways Airbus A380. This model is part of Aviation 400's first release from their new Airbus A380 mold, and overall, it's had quite a warm welcome into the model collecting community. In this video, I'll talk about the box, then the model itself, and at the end of the video, I will give my personal opinion about what I think of the model and whether or not I recommend it to other collectors. Starting up with the box, I'm only going to talk about this very shortly. The box is 19.5 centimeters lengthwise, 19.5 centimeters tall, and about 5 centimeters wide. So it's pretty reasonable for this kind of aircraft, and it's also pretty similar in size to other wide-body 1 to 400 scale aircraft boxes. So it should fit nicely with your other boxes. Aside from that, there's nothing really special about it. It's a typical Aviation 400 airplane box. Once you open up the box, you get the model fully assembled and ready to go. 2 landing gear configuration options, one in the extended position, one in the retracted position. For the majority of this review, I will keep the landing gear in the extended position, but later in the video I will demonstrate what the landing gear covers look like in the retracted position. And you also get a plastic display stand. I'd like to talk about the display stand briefly. The display stand that's included is quite garbage. It's made out of plastic, and out of the box it's near impossible to assemble, and it doesn't even fit to the model very well. I actually had to modify it in order for the model to fit on the display stand properly. And just in general, it's not the smartest idea to put such a large and heavy model on a rather insufficient support, and you can see that the model does shake quite a bit even if you touch it. So if you want to display this model, I highly recommend getting another display stand. Now I'm going to do a quick 360 of the model so you can get a good look at everything. The model is 18 centimeters lengthwise, the wingspan is 20 centimeters, and it's about 6.5 centimeters tall. Accurate to 1 to 400 scale, and I should mention that the model is quite heavy because it is made primarily out of die-cast metal. Now for the fun part, let's start up the review at the front of the aircraft. Here we can see the nose section of the plane. Nose shape and profile looks pretty solid. It looks like it's on par with other 1 to 400 scale Airbus A380 molds, and I really don't notice anything out of the ordinary. I'm no expert on this aircraft's nose shape though, so if you do see something, please let me know down below. Moving down the fuselage, you can see plenty of printed and painted details, all of which look fantastic. I have no complaints on any of the printing, as all of it looks pretty good. Everything seems to be accurate as well. Colors look pretty much flawless. I don't have any complaints on the colors. Overall, very nicely done in terms of just the fuselage, painting, details, printed details, and the shape. Moving up to the vertical stabilizer, here's the vertical stabilizer. It has a molded rudder detail which looks pretty good. Printed detail looks fantastic. The logo looks beautiful. Colors look pretty good despite what my camera's showing. I know my camera isn't really the best at picking up colors. Yeah, no complaints up here. Now I'm going to show the right side of the aircraft. It's virtually identical to the left side, aside from a few differences in terms of printed detail, but I can say the exact same thing about the right side as I did with the left side. Shapes look good, colors look good, details look good, no complaints at all. Moving on to the wings are very nicely detailed and they're molded very nicely as well. Lots of molded detail to go around in both the rear and front section of the wings. No complaints on any of that. All of it looks good and very well defined. There's a lot of painted detail and printed detail up here as well, all of which looks good. It's very well defined and I have no complaints. Here's the bottom of the wing. The bottom of the wing doesn't have very much painted detail, but it does have some printed detail, as in this little section right here at the front. That's really it. But it still looks good, and you can see the aircraft's registration on the bottom of the left wing. Something that I'd like to point out, which is a very small detail that I didn't notice until I started making this video, is the fuel dump line right here on the wing. It's actually painted gray, and there is a distinctive difference in the shape of the back section here. I'm not sure what this is called. I think it's called a fairing of some sort. There's a distinctive difference between the shape of this one and the rest, since it has that pipe extension to dump the fuel. And this is present on the right side as well. So it's no accident, it's an included detail, which was certainly a very pleasant surprise. Moving to the rear section of the aircraft, here we can see the horizontal stabilizers and the APU. The APU looks very nicely detailed. There's even a little hole where the APU exhaust is, which is something I don't see on some 1 to 200 scale aircraft, let alone 1 to 400 scale, so that's a very nice detail to see. Horizontal stabilizers look good. There's printed detail at the top, but there's nothing at the bottom, but there's not supposed to be anything down there, so I won't complain too much. There appears to be a little bit of a stain right there. Okay, no, never mind, that's just a bit of a, I guess that's a little piece of trash or something. Down here, there's not really that much except for the APU access doors, but all of it looks really good. Moving to the aircraft's engines, the engines on this model are simply fantastic. I really appreciate the inclusion of the fan blade details and the spinner spirals, and yes, the fan blades do spin, albeit they're pretty stiff. Engine number 2 here doesn't spin at all, but here you can kind of see a little bit of spinning on engine 1, and yes, that is a spinner spiral you see on there. They did include that detail. There's also plenty of printed detail visible from up here, and there's even more at the bottom, which I will show you later. But yeah, you can see very nicely defined Rolls-Royce logos. The pylons look pretty good, featuring a lot of printed and painted detail as well. And the exhaust section looks fantastic, very nicely shaped, and very nicely painted. Here's what the bottom of the engines looks like. Here you can see a lot more printed detail and a better look at the exhaust if you didn't like what I showed you first. Very nicely detailed and no complaints. Moving on to aerial details, this model features sat domes, antennas, and 3D lights, something which is not seen on any other 1 to 400 scale aircraft other than Aviation 400s. At the top of the aircraft, we have 3 antennas, 2 of which you can see here. There's one at the front and one at the midsection. There's also a small molded sat dome here, which looks pretty good. It's outlined by a bit of a printed outline there, and the outline matches pretty much exactly with the molded sat dome, which is a very nice detail. And there are 2 3D lights up here, both of which are aligned nicely, and I have no complaints about them. They look really nice. At the rear section, we can see a very small antenna just before the vertical stabilizer, and that looks good as well. It's actually incredibly small, so I'm very surprised it was included at all. Apologies in advance, I completely forgot about the wingtip fences here, but I guess since we're talking about small aerial features, we'll talk about them now. The wingtip fences look very nicely shaped. You can see they're very nicely done, and they look like they're painted quite nicely. There's a little bit of paint chipping on the red part of this, I think, or I'm not sure what that is, but it's very small and minuscule, so I really won't complain about that. There's also this gray dot you see there, and that is part of the wingtip fence. It's also present on the right side, so it's not a stain, it's not a scratch, it is an included detail. Now that we're at the bottom of the aircraft, we have one aerial detail here, and that's one singular antenna right here. It looks pretty good. There's also a red dot here, which I'm going to assume represents a light. However, I'm rather surprised that they didn't put a 3D light here as I expected they would, but it's honestly not necessary since on pretty much every other 1 to 400 scale aircraft, the lights are painted as red dots. Now I will talk about the landing gear. The landing gear on this aircraft are quite interesting. They're attached very well and through a system of magnets, which the attachment is rather weak, but once they're in the model, they fit pretty firmly. They hold the model steadily, and you shouldn't be rolling it around, but the wheels do roll. Some of them are a bit stiff, but overall, most of them roll. The fuselage triple bogies, I should mention, these don't have any indicators of which side they should be on, so I'm going to assume they're universal for each side. I really don't know for sure, but if you do know something about that, please comment down below. But on the landing gears themselves, I don't really see any indicators or any tips as to how you're supposed to mount them on the model. Here's the nose gear. The nose gear is quite nice. The wheels don't roll on the nose gear. However, I think that's something specific to my example here. I'm not sure that's something that's part of the new mold. That might be just isolated. I hope it's isolated. Now I will demonstrate what the landing gear slots look like without the landing gear. So I'll show you how I pull these out. As you can see, I only have to use my fingertips, and it requires very minimal force to separate the landing gear from the rest of the aircraft. And I should mention that the landing gear fit very snugly and easily into the aircraft's fuselage. Here's what the landing gear covers look like for the retracted position. They fit to the aircraft very nicely, and ironically enough, they fit to the aircraft better than some 1 to 200 scale aircraft. You can see the ones for the fuselage and the wings. They fit very nicely, and it almost looks like there's no covers in there. The one for the nose is a bit more defined, but it's well within acceptable margins. I think I already said this, but in some 1 to 200 scale aircraft, which are much larger than this model, this can't be done, which is rather ironic. I should mention that the covers for the fuselage bogies, these are directional. They do have a designated place to go, but there's same deal with the landing gear themselves. There's no markers or indicators for which side or which door they go in, so you do have to, I guess, eyeball that. And while it doesn't make a difference if you put the wrong one in the wrong hole, it still does. It is rather noticeable. So yeah, make sure you are rather familiar with the A380's anatomy and you have an idea of which piece belongs where. Here's what the cover on the nose looks like. The cover actually looks like it has a bit of a paint issue with the red paint here. You can see it's kind of smeared and it's not really done that well. With the model, you also get 2 of these pointy tools, and these tools are made out of plastic, and these are to remove the landing gear covers. There's little holes in the landing gear covers where you can stick this tool, and they will come right out. Like the landing gear, these have a rather weak magnetic attachment, but it is just strong enough so the landing gear covers won't fall out when you display the model on the stand or wherever you choose to display it. But it's also weak enough so you don't have to put a great amount of effort into removing the covers. So very nicely done on Aviation 400's part right there. For the final segment of this review, I'll show you a view at the front of the aircraft. Here you can see the wings, the gear balance, all sorts of things. Overall, wings look pretty good. They are angled quite extremely, actually. I'm not 100% sure if that's accurate, but there is a very noticeable angle in the wings. So form your own opinion with that. Cockpit window printing looks symmetrical, logo application looks symmetrical, gear balance looks perfect, which is very surprising considering that these are magnetically attached. Normally magnetically attached gear usually have some sort of balance issue, so the landing gear in my example fit very nicely. And there you have it, that's my review for this airplane. And now time for my personal opinion and recommendation. Honestly, this model is nothing short of fantastic. I was simply impressed by all of the details and everything about this model. As I am with most Aviation 400 models, Aviation 400 is a very good company when it comes to producing these models, although it takes a while for them to get them out of the factory. So, with that being said, I 110% recommend this model to any collector who wants to get it. And get it soon, because as of the making of this video, this thing is selling like hotcakes, and I doubt it'll be in stock for very much longer. I'm very impressed at the fact that the interchangeable landing gear was included on this model, and the fact that it's done so well when other aircraft that are much larger in size, that it would be mostly simpler to do, have worse landing gear. This is nothing short of impressive. As one of my fellow collectors said, this is the peak of this hobby. Honestly, this is an incredible model, and yeah, I'm very, very, very happy with it. Well, that concludes my review. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Oh my god, I went way over time. That's really all I have to say. Stay tuned for more content. I do have more Aviation 400 Airbus A380s coming in, so stay tuned for those. Like, comment, and subscribe, and take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in my next video.